Hi, everyone, and welcome to another segment of the Nonprofits. Today, we're going to discuss one of our good friends on this show, the superintendent of schools in Oklahoma, Brian Walters, and how he's making it harder for people from some states to become teachers in his state. And to take us there is our own resident teacher expert, Flabbergasted.
I'm not sure if I'd say I'm a teacher expert. I'm a former teacher of 10 years,
I had
though.
to say something.
I'm a former teacher. Here's gives me a little bit of credibility, but I mean, it's as if teachers weren't already facing enough hurdles. I mean, the state of Oklahoma is now requiring teachers from certain states to pass what could effectively be called a political loyalty test for teachers who are seeking to transfer their licenses to the state. And according to Oklahoma's public school superintendent, this assessment, which is administered by Prager U, is meant to protect classrooms from radical leftist ideology. And for reference, this is the same individual who pushed a change to the curriculum standards in Oklahoma in 2020 to include conspiracy theories about the 2020 election. And while many people are critiquing the source and the content of the assessment, rightfully so, others are also concerned that Oklahoma, like many other states, already faces severe teacher shortages. And as such, this action and actions like this are going to exacerbate that issue. And this was reported by Chris Williams at Fox 26 Houston, August 19th, 2025.
Yeah, I thought state-run schools weren't supposed to be controlled by private institutions, and I'm pretty sure last time I checked, Prager U is a private organization. So I was really kind of disgusted by this whole idea. Cynthia, do you think that there's like dangerous precedents being set here with this questionnaire?
I mean, the very fact that they use Prager U to actually administer the test is already just like, I all of a sudden, listen, guys, all of a sudden when I heard about Prager U being involved in any of this stuff, like the first thing I saw was the robot from Lost in Space going, danger, Will Robinson, danger, I mean, this is just, there's danger. Like, listen, this is the same outfit that tried to use Frederick Douglass to basically say that slavery was not that big of a deal. This is the same outfit that said they used, genocidal Christopher Columbus to say, hey, slavery was everywhere, so it's all good, and but you shouldn't burn down towns. This is the same outfit. It's the racist piece of crap their whole curriculum is culture war. Okay, that is what Prager U should change their name from Prager University to Culture War bullshit. I'm sorry, because this is not a university. This is not education. This is not, even when I was watching some of the cartoons that they actually put off, the only thing that happened is like, my brain cells just started to die and ooze out of my ear, guys. This is what's happening. So just using them alone to provide this political litmus test is just like ridiculous. How can you have an organization, a private organization, provide a litmus test for public school teachers to actually teach, to show competency in their teaching when the majority of the things that they put out is misinformation and or downright lies? Like, seriously, like this, Prager U is basically trying to pigeonhole themselves into conservative media as a way of, dulling the senses and like pushing propaganda. That's what they're doing. And so to actually say, hey, let's use them, right, to, test these teachers that's coming from two blue areas in order to see where the ideology lies to make sure that they're able to teach to teach in our schools is absolutely ridiculous. So, and what is this whole thing about protecting from radical leftist ideology? What about the ideology that you actually are teaching that slavery was not that big of a deal? Like, really? Like, Kelley,
what about radical fascist ideology?
Yeah. So those are the dangers. But there are more. But I'm going to let Flabbergasted say things. So I'm going to shut up right now.
No, it's the crux of what you're saying is it's not just that they were saying that slavery wasn't a big deal. The words that they had their bullshit version of Frederick Douglass say was slavery was better than death. That was the verbatim phrase that they made the well-known abolitionist say, is that slavery was better than death. I mean, Frederick Douglass is rolling over in his grave. I mean, we're gonna have a zombie Frederick Douglass coming up just to fight this BS, because that's ridiculous. There is absolutely that is not the position of abolitionists. Like there were abolitionists who were killing over slavery. Black abolitionists,
Insert
white
John
abolitionists.
Brown here. Insert John Brown here. Thank you.
Exactly. And to say that it's better than death. No. Slaves were willing to and were regularly risking death for freedom, which should tell you everything you need to know about that statement. And it is a absolute lie. It is a historical lie. It is a misrepresentation to the most extreme fashion, that's trying to justify the worst atrocity in American history. And this organization is the one that they're going to point to and say, you know what? You know who's going to choose a really good test to really make sure that we don't have any political bias in our schools, to make sure that our teachers don't have political bias? We're going to choose the organization that puts out the most biased content, historically speaking, ever. Like this, Prager U's books makes Bill O'Reilly's history books look legit.
Oh my God! Wait, no, I got one better for you. Prager U's books are so bad they make the Daughters of the Confederacy with their McGraw-Hill books look like, you know, the best thing ever that came closest to the history of ever in life.
Yeah. The Daughters of the Daughters of the Confederacy are better historians than Prager U.
That part. Thank you, because I was having problems with words.
Yeah,
that's simple.
Prager U is probably one of the big leaders of the culture wars. Let's face it. And so I worry about how these questions are going to be pointed toward those cultural problems. And I think Flabbergasted might have an example of many of those questions for us.
I have all the questions.
Ooh.
I've read all of the questions, and the ones that are not just like it's a horrible test. It's 50 questions. So many of the questions are just bad questions. Questions that if I asked a middle schooler, I would be embarrassed to have that on my test. Right? Like, what are the first 3 words of the Constitution? Really? What actual value do you actually determine from someone by knowing the first 3 words of the Constitution? Like, because that isn't what defines the content. Like, is it important? Is there context to it? Yeah, sure. But like, you have 50 questions and that's the one you're going to choose. How many U.S. senators are there? You really think teachers are going to struggle with that question? That's going to be and the reality is these horrible questions, these questions that aren't good questions, are simply kind of put in there as filler to hide the horrible questions, the extremely problematic questions. And I mentioned before, I'm a former teacher. I was a history teacher. And I'm a historian. That is my background. That is my field. And so there's some questions in here about science that love to get a science talk about them. But like, what is the fundamental biological distinction between males and females? They say chromosomes and reproductive anatomy. Well, congratulations. You just missed 11 answers. You just missed, because there's 13 primary and secondary sex characteristics that determine biological sex. And they're just like, no, we're just going to pick 2 arbitrarily that fit into our understanding of this. And like, we're going to make sure that you don't understand science enough so you can teach in our schools. And then when we get in I'm sorry, I can go off on all day about this.
Go off, son. Go off.
I wonder about that. Is that like intentionally putting that kind of information out there to dumb people down, right?
Yeah.
So we're almost trying to keep the smart people away from educating our kids.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. They also added a question about a 2025 Supreme Court case. A 2025 Supreme Court case, which is something that is not taught in schools. A 2025 Supreme Court case that says the Supreme Court case was Mahmoud versus Taylor, the Supreme Court case that says public schools cannot require participation in LGBTQ themed instruction without parental consent. And first off, they're representing it like the existence of queer people is something that has to be consented to by parents for kids to learn about in school, which is actually a misrepresentation of the Supreme Court case, which is kind of what they're trying to imply with this question. But it's also something that isn't addressed in schools. That is a matter of school policy. That is like that is a school policy issue, not an instructional issue. So like most teachers, especially ones that aren't civics teachers or history teachers or current event teachers, aren't going to know that, nor would you expect them to. That's something for administrators to know, to make sure that their employees and the teachers are following the regulations and laws as they apply, whether or not we agree with them, right? And like, just so many problems. There's they asked the question of what's the following which of the following is a phrase from the Pledge of Allegiance? And the correct answer is one nation under God, indivisible, liberty of justice for all. In a test that is talking about all of the origins of America, all the origins of the Constitution, all of this stuff. Oh, but except the Pledge of Allegiance, we're going to pick the Cold War version of that one. Not the original Pledge of Allegiance. We're going to pick a particular version of this one that we actually want to propagate as the normative answer instead of the one that actually falls in line with the context of the rest of the questions, right? Is that a valid question to ask about the Civil War? What change was made to the Pledge of Allegiance during the Cold War? Yes, valid, absolutely valid question to ask. But when you have a question, who's the father of our country? What's the name of the national anthem? What are the 13 stripes about? Which of the following is a phrase for the Pledge of Allegiance? And the one that you choose to bring the modern rendition of instead of the original rendition is the one that includes a preference for your religious ideology is some BS. And yeah, so you want to hear about more questions or?
No, I'm enjoying it. I mean, I think we,
I'm having some sickness a little bit right here every time that I heard those questions. I'm just oh shit, my bad.
We got 20 minutes and for this, and I can go for an hour, 2 hours. You want me to break down the problem with each single question? Like,
man, I think that like, what we already have is like the irony here is glaring in our faces. Like leaders claim that they want to prevent indoctrination, but they're literally imposing state mandated indoctrination tests.
Yes.
That's what at the heart of this is. Yeah. And also is a disregard of students. They want well-trained teachers, not adults wasting time providing loyalty to partisan agenda. That's what we should be on, right? But what they're really trying to do is saying that if we're going to actually have teachers come in, even from these other states, we want them to continuously go with the propaganda edge so that we can indoctrinate our kids to turn them into automatons so that they can repeat all the things that we want them to say instead of actually being critical thinking and skeptical human beings like the way that they should, who actually have knowledge about the world around them and don't become automatons to Christian nationalism.
Yeah.
And that's the most egregious part about this whole entire thing.
Yeah, it's the whole dichotomy that I think exists in education of the conservative approach to education versus what I would call a liberal approach to education, or maybe a progressive approach would be the terminology I might prefer.
I like that.
The conservative approach to education is what to think. The progressive approach to education is how to think. And the left is often accused of, oh, you're trying to indoctrinate our kids about what to think. No, we're not at all. Like I do not walk into a classroom telling you what you should leave the classroom believing. I give you the tools and the structure to differentiate good information from bad information. So that way, no matter what information you run into, you can distinguish good information from bad information and come to rational, evidence-based conclusions. The problem that they have with that is that tends to lean in a particular ideological direction away from theirs. And the only way they can combat that is by taking away the ability to teach skills and focus on reinforcing specific narratives and specific what to think, what to believe ideas. And that's all they're doing. And that's all this test does. And that's...
I mean, that just all that does is propagate fascism and authoritarianism. That's what it is. And I mean, like, and it also just goes with the whole thing about get them while they're young, right? Get them while they're young. Teach them to be like, you know, these like these automatons, instead of like being able to know how to critically think and actually, you know, have like a vigorous education that's going to give them all the tools necessary so that they know how to make proper decisions based on skepticism and critical thinking. And that way, because like here's the thing, if you are not a skeptic, if you are not a critical thinker rather, you're not going to question the authorities and the leadership that's above you, especially if they are often wrong. And that's what we are trying to create when you're doing this, is like a society that's going to allow leadership to be often wrong. And everybody's going to be like, but dear leader said it's okay. And they're going to use Prager U to be the very vehicle in order for them to propagate this bullshit to our kids. And this is absolutely egregious.
It is.
And we're going to do that by weeding out all the people that might put any ideas into our kids' heads that aren't our ideas, right? We're going to get rid of any possible teacher that could teach them anything that we don't want them to know.
Right.
Yeah.
Like queer people existing.
Yeah.
Like, you know, Black people, you know, would have been are happier when they were slaves rather than being free.
Like the whole reason,
you know, there was never a indigenous genocide. And Columbus was absolutely okay with, you know, with like slaughtering and enslaving indigenous people when he first came to the New World. Yeah,
all the workers were happy before trade unions.
That part, exactly. Yeah, you know, it's really okay to make 3-year-olds and 4-year-olds work in your freaking factories. That's fine.
Isn't Oklahoma one of the states? Isn't Oklahoma one of the states that is like going back to having kids work in their factories too?
Yes.
Is it? I know Iowa was.
That's one of the states that's like rolling back, you know, child labor laws. You know, I mean, child, y'all got my.
I'm double checking that real quick.
Yeah, please, double check. But I know that there are states that are actually like introducing laws to try to roll back like child labor laws, and I know Iowa's one. Yeah,
we actually covered that story on the show a couple of years ago. Yeah,
we did.
Maybe it was last year, but it was a while back because I was on that episode. Actually, I remember doing that one.
Actually, so to be fair to Oklahoma, because I want to be accurate, Oklahoma is not one of the states doing it. A lot of their neighbors are. Oklahoma is not. And the Oklahoma Labor Commissioner in 2023 spoke out against it. So good job. Parts of Oklahoma aren't screwing up. Unfortunately, that's not applying to the school system.
Listen.
I was about to say they need to get the kids into schools so they can brainwash them first before they send them out into the labor market, right?
And then when they actually get into the labor market, instead of having the minimum wage, because I believe that the minimum wage is like, 14 years old with the exemptions for farm work and work for parents. So like, hopefully if we can actually get to them before they actually put all this other crap into place, that we can actually get some people in there that will say, hey, let's not do child labor ever. It's not a good idea. And make your kids automatons to, authoritarianism and fascism. Let's not do that. Can we just not do that?
Yeah. And it's
everybody does that.
I think
how many people make their kids clean the house and wash the dishes? We all do.
I just made
That's not
my
child
kid
labor,
clean
though.
up.
That's participating in a home.
Well, okay. Well, here's the thing. Like, as a parent who made my kid clean up his mess, it's more so like, you're going to take accountability.
Yeah,
like,
right.
Listen, you messed up, you clean up, right?
I'll give you that. I will give you that.
But it's a whole other thing when you're actually exploiting children for your bottom line and your gain. And to be honest, even though okay, maybe I was wrong that Oklahoma is not like a child labor state, but you're still exploiting kids. You're still exploiting them in order for you to actually push your bottom line, and you're hoping that you can get a group of teachers to do it with you. And if you say, oh, those people come from that daggum New York and California, they're going to teach them liberal to our kids, and we can't have that. No, we cannot.
They're going to teach a scientific understanding that goes beyond what I learned in 2nd grade, and I just can't have that around these parts.
That's right, because Noah and the ark, damn it.
Dog.
God created Adam and Eve, not Adam and Steve. Tell
There
you
you
what.
go. 6 days, Flabbergasted. 6 days for the world. It's just six, and God
And on the
rested on the
seventh he
seventh.
rest. Praise gibbers.
Yeah, bye. That's what I'm talking about right there. Jesus all day long.
So as much as I want to continue mocking this entire approach to thinking, I want to know something else about the whole Prager U thing and the school thing, is that like, this is, I genuinely don't know if this is going to be challenged in courts. I don't know what Oklahoma's laws are. I don't live in Oklahoma. But this is never how we implement these things, right? We have school boards, we have state legislation that implement standards for all of this stuff. And this seems like a circumvention of that for a political ideology. And I genuinely hope, as much as I don't have a lot of faith, as you might call it, in Oklahoma as a state, I certainly hope that they are going to say, actually, you know, this one might be a step too far. And I really hope they can kind of put a pin in that, because it's not just a threat to incoming teachers. It is a threat to teachers who are already there, already working. There are teachers who are already in Oklahoma teaching who may be subject to these tests, who actually are subject to these tests. And it also sets a precedence that makes a lot of people, and a lot of people who want to be teachers, who are teachers, sit there and be like, wait, when are they going to do the next step? And do I want to wait for that shoe to drop before I leave this field? Because teachers already have way too many problems. And it's so hard to keep teachers in their roles. Most teachers in their first couple of years don't continue. And
no, they don't.
This is going to make it harder.
And as
But
you
when we
actually
can't have
showed,
I was going to say, well, we can't have these teachers from California coming in here and spreading the gay on our kids.
Yeah,
That's
instead,
right.
they'd rather just have a National Guard private come in and teach classes or something. What state did that? There's a state that actually did that, that brought in like National Guard people to fill bodies in classes because they didn't have enough teachers. My details on that might be right, might be wrong, but the concept is right. And so don't hold me to those details. Florida, let veterans teach. Someone shared with me. Florida brought in like vets, like people were absolutely unqualified to teach anything as teachers because they had such a shortage.
Just like any private school.
Private schools, actually. So I've taught in private schools. I've taught in public schools. I've taught in international schools. I've taught in 3 different countries. And that like the idea of just bringing someone in like that is something you'd never see. Like even in a private school where they bring in someone who doesn't have a teaching degree, they still have standards far above that. And you'd be surprised. Sometimes you can get some really good teachers in private schooles, even if they're not like certified in as they would be for state
and
schools.
to be fair, I went to a private school, right? It was a Catholic private school. I went to a Catholic grammar school. I went to a Catholic Catholic high school, and those teachers were vetted because that was the standard that was utilized for those particular organizations at that time. So I don't want to to Flabbergasted's point, I don't want to necessarily shit on all private schools.
No.
I hear what you're saying, Kelley. But
I'm going to tell you why I said that. Because after I got out of college, I had no experience, no training in teaching. And I taught for a year at a private school. I taught English. So they hired me for crying out loud. So,
but also to your point, Kelley, there are other schools that were out there. I can think of Yeezy, talking to you, who had a whole Christian school, where you had like very little standards. And then when it came to your teachers, to the point where you couldn't even get your damn school accredited. So there's that. And I think that, at the end of the day, this should just be a clarion call for us to be more poignant about how we are allowing certain outfits from the outside to come in on basically how not only the kids are being taught, but who is teaching them. And one more thing. as far as like the precedent, just to put a cherry on top of what Flabbergasted talked about, not only is it going to be like a precedent for, for like, how things go in the future, but it could also be a precedent that other states actually copy. And that's exactly, and we've already had that, we've seen that. And the hell that I would want this to be copied in another state where it's going to fuck up somebody else's kids.
Yeah.
That's all I got to say.
Well, before I end this segment, I want to say we want to hear from you, the people watching. If you saw something you liked, if you saw something you didn't like, send us an email at the email right below at tv@atheist-community.org, or leave a comment. I often read the comments. I'll respond if you want me to. So, yeah, we want to hear from you. And join us for the next episode of Nonprofits. And for more of the older ones, you can look right here.